When the daughter of a company falls in love with a poor man who lives alone, Kdrama is the child of a businessman. She is known as a skilled pianist. Losing her mother since at birth didn't cause Kdrama's life to fall apart because her father always loved her more than anything in this world. Even though she is wealthy, it doesn't make Kdrama arrogant. She is humble and cheerful. Considering her age, her father urged Kdrama to marry soon to her fiancé, who was a prospective doctor named Bang Yeonam. In truth, Kdrama didn't really love the man, but she believed that her father's choice was the best one.
알겠어. 괜히 마음 졸였네.
알아요.
Moving on to a handsome man Sun Woo-jun who was working as a builder, after receiving his wages, he hurried back to his boarding house. In the middle of the journey, he saw a crash as the rider hit a fruit stall. Apparently, the man was in a rush because he was delivering a bouquet to a wedding that was about to start in just a few minutes. June, willing to help, went to the building not far from where Kdrama was going to have her wedding. Surprised by a stranger in her room, Kdrama was uncomfortable and told June to leave. So her actions made June experience a nosebleed. As the wedding ceremony was about to begin, Kdrama became increasingly worried because her father hadn't yet arrived. It turned out that Kdrama then learned her father had a heart attack at the reception hall. It turns out the illness he suffers from is linked to his company on the brink of bankruptcy and not leaving any assets due to the debts he has to pay. The gossip also reached the ears of the invited guests, including the Yeonam family. Jungnam's mother even immediately took her son away from the wedding and intended to call it off right then and there. At the hospital, Kdrama had to let her father go forever, as the medical team couldn't save him. June heard of a wedding incident where the groom ran away after finding out Mr. Gu went bankrupt. It turns out June had been on the run from his home for months. That night, June was seen pursued by two burly men who chased him all the way to a hideout. They were sent by June's mother, who wanted her son to return immediately because his father was coming back to Korea. Apparently, June's father didn't know that his son had run away because of a certain issue. Kdrama's father's secretary, the name Mr. Mun, tried calming Kdrama. He gave Kdrama 100 million rupiahs and asked her to hide for a while because the debt collectors were watching her. Kdrama became even more sad because her home had already been auctioned off. Armed with that money and a car, Mr. Mun hopes that Kdrama can survive on her own because she has no relatives. Kdrama must be willing to accept that she can't attend her father Escalating's funeral.
잠잠해지면 그때 찾아가세요.
Some time passed, and Kdrama began looking for a place to live. Eventually, she found an apartment to rent. The next day, she had bad luck, as he was deceived by a real estate agent. Now, she didn't know where to turn for help because she couldn't reach Mr. Mun. That day, she was seen visiting her parents' graves to pour out her heart.
이쁘지?
Actually, Yeonam is still worried about Kdrama's condition. However, her mother always banned her to contacting Kdrama because she worried be dragged about Mr. Mun's debts. After running away from his old boarding house, June now had a new place to live, which he rented at a low price on the outskirts of Unpo city. His handsomeness made a girl named Haeyoung crazy about him and always give him attention.
짠! 오늘은 참치 주먹밥이다.
One day, Kdrama received a message on social media from an account called Twinkle Star. The person asked Kdrama to come to a place outside the city if she needed help. With more hopes, Kdrama drove her car to specified location because she thought the person knew her father. At that time, June was cycling to his workplace. He was involved in an accident with Kdrama's car, which suddenly lost control. Upon arriving at the hospital, Kdrama was examined by Eun-sok, who was the chief doctor and a friend of Yeonam. Kdrama suffered a neck injury and both of her hands had to be in casts for weeks. After dealing with Kdrama's condition, Eun-sok offers to treat June too. However, June refused and treated his own wounds in the hospital toilet room. How shocked Kdrama was when she woke up, the first person she saw was June. She once encountered it on his cancelled wedding. For some reason, June felt sympathy seeing Rara's lonely situation, so he decided to help her while she was in the hospital. That night, Rara explained her reason for coming to the city to meet someone. However, that person canceled appointment because must to leave town. Now, Rara also felt that all her efforts were in vain and pointless after she left the hospital. At that time, June wanted to seek compensation as his bicycle broke. Rara promised to pay for everything once she fully recovered, using the money from selling her car. After agreeing, June was willing to wait for Rara at the hospital as Rara relied heavily on June for her needs.
내가 돈이 없어본 게 처음이라 그거 어떻게 해야 될지 모르겠네.
The next day, a patient was admitted to the same room as Rara. The woman assumed that Rara and June were a couple because they looked so well matched. June said that he was a victim of an accident for which Rara also owes him a lot. Patiently, June has to take care of and feed Rara, even buying ointment for her. But after that, June also has to work at a food stall and a store. While at the hospital lot, Unsok asked June why he was willing to take care of Rara. That also made June uncomfortable because Unsok thought he had met June before. Disappearing all day worried Haeyoung about June's situation. However, she was happy as June returned to his boarding house. Without asking if June is having any problems, she hands over a brochure for part-time work for the next 2 days. Actually, June was hesitant because he would have to leave Rara for a few days. However, because he needed the money, finally June took the job.
50만 원이라.
Feeling lonely while waiting for June, Rara spent her time watching a musical performance in the hospital lobby. Seeing that reminded her of the time when she used to play the piano. Unsok approached her and encouraged her, saying Rara could still play the piano when her hand healed. It turned out that the job offered in the brochure took up a lot of time, making June feel overwhelmed. Finally, June left the briefing session, which caused a bit of a commotion. In a battered state, June returned to the hospital and saw Rara and Unsok together. June immediately took Rara for a walk around the hospital to get some fresh air. While riding a bike, Rara cried because June had disappeared without a word for 2 days, when she needed him the most. Even though they haven't known each other for long, Rara considers June to be her best friend for a long time. She thought her meeting with June for the second time was considered a form of miracle. Likewise, June felt sympathy for Rara after hearing about her family issues and the failed marriage due to an arranged marriage. Afterward, June took Rara to the neighbor's salon, namely Mrs. Jin's salon, to clean her hair because Rara's hair looked tangled.
오, 시원해.
Rara's disappearance made Dongnam worried, so he sought information from her friends, but he found nothing. Youngnam invited Unsok to his office to express his feelings. Strangely, Unsok knew Rara was his friend's fiancé. Unsok didn't tell Youngnam that Rara was being treated at the hospital where he worked. From this conversation, it was discovered that Unsok had just gotten divorced. Next day, Rara borrowed money from June to pay the hospital costs. At that time, Rara had to be patient because her left hand still needed to be in a cast and could only be removed a week later.
아직 함부로 막 쓰지 말죠.
네, 너무 좋아서.
During that time, Unsok followed Rara wherever she went, which led him to the shop where June worked. June felt uncomfortable because Rara always following him everywhere he went. Finally, he asked Rara to wait at Mrs. Jin's salon. June promised to find Rara a place to stay after he got off work.
네가 자꾸 쳐다봐서 엄청 신경 쓰인다고.
When she arrived at Mrs. Jin's salon, Rara claimed to be a new resident in the neighborhood. Rara's beauty and the branded items she used left Mrs. Jin amazed. She then tried to trick Rara by offering a hair treatment under the guise of a cheap price. Rara was certainly tempted. Rara admitted if she doesn't have any money. Seeing Rara at her mother's salon, Haeyoung wasn't too pleased, finding Rara was borrowing money. Mrs. Jin told her daughter that Rara was a new resident, so she had to be polite. There was a commotion when Haeyoung forced Rara to pay for the treatment costs. At just the right moment, June arrived to resolve the issue.
준아!
In front of everyone, June introduced Rara as his fiancée to live with him. That made Haeyoung so jealous he couldn't sleep well. Because Jun's living conditions didn't have a room, Jun had to provide a makeshift mattress for Rara. As he's been a fan of Rara for a long time, Eun-suk also keeps thinking about her and plans to find Rara using an address he already knows. Finally, he managed to find the place that turned out to be Mrs. Jin's salon. Thinking Eun-suk was a bad person, the cautious Haeyoung hit the man. But suddenly, they heard Rara screaming from Jun's place. It turned out that Rara was shocked at that time because she saw Jun in front of her without any clothes on. In fact, Jun had only been trying to pick up a glass of water that had fallen near Rara's bed. Finally, both of them explained the misunderstanding, as did Eun-suk, who said the purpose of his visit. Eun-suk admitted to being worried about her patient manipulated by a man she just met. However, after finding out that Jun is a good man, Eun-suk said goodbye and reminded Rara about her next checkup schedule.
너 환자니까.
Because it made Haeyoung uncomfortable, Rara said if she would only stay for one night, look for another place to rent tomorrow. Haeyoung offered Rara to rent a room in her house. However, because had no income, Mrs. Jin objected and driving Rara away. That night, Rara got lost returning to Jun's, she looking sad at the street end. Knowing Rara gone Jun and Eun-suk panicked when Rara left. After seeing Jun come looking for her, Rara was touched and relieved because Jun was the only person who could lend her money. Jun assured that he would pay the room rent and all the expenses incurred by Mrs. Jin while Rara was at her house. The more Rara relied on him, for some reason Jun actually felt happy. Even though she comes from a wealthy family, but Rara is okay if she has to stay in a room resembling a storage room. That night, Haeyoung investigated Rara on her social media. Finally, she believes Rara is daughter of owner of a cosmetics company. Next day, Rara woke up and ate food prepared by Mrs. Jin. Rara's innocence and way of speaking made Mrs. Jin and Haeyoung blush because Rara praised both of them as talented in many things.
너 재능 있는 것 같아.
That day, Rara considered applying for a job as a piano tutor. However, because her hand is still in a cast, a woman will only hire Rara if she is completely healed. Rara returned to Mrs. Jin's salon, prompting other customers to ask, "Who is Rara?" Rara shared her dramatic family story, where her company went bankrupt at the same time her father passed away.
아버지가 돌아가시고 쫄딱 망했다. 이거야?
네.
They suggested Rara look for Mr. Mun's location, but Rara is convinced Mr. Mun is an honest person and would never betray, since he is in his hometown. Without Rara know, Mr. Mun was actually enjoying a life of luxury aboard a cruise ship. So far, Mr. Mun's involvement in the bankruptcy of Mr. Gu's company remains a mystery. The failure of the man who once promised to find Jun made Mrs. Jo angry. She then threatened Kiminsa to quickly find Jun because his father would soon return.
추정만 하지 말고 좀 빨리 좀 찾아내라고 좀!
Jun's background made Rara curious as Jun collected textbooks in English. She saw a photo of Jun when he was still in school, but Jun scolded Rara for being presumptuous in opening his personal belongings. Rara's easygoing character eventually led her friend Seongi to have no qualms about treating her. They talked about Jun's talents. Besides being fluent in many languages, because Jun is also skilled in mathematics and sports. However, Jun said he would only attend school up to middle school.
나 중졸이야.
That night, Jun received news that Rara's pet dog, treated at the clinic, can go home. However, Mrs. Jin opposed Rara bringing her pet home. Because he felt sorry for Mimi, finally Jun agreed to take care of it.
미미는 일단 내가 데려갈게.
Meanwhile, elsewhere, Eun-suk suffers from an illness from taking many pills every day. That was the day Rara had been waiting for, because she was getting her cast off. Knowing Rara has recovered, Haeyoung challenges Rara to prove if she is really a pianist. They then took Rara to a park where there was a public piano. Seeing Rara's stunning performance finally made them believe in her. Almost every day, Rara would come to that park and always posted about it on her social media account.
다카포. 다시 처음부터.
June grew worried because Rara practiced almost every night until late. June actually wants to buy a piano for Rara, but his savings are insufficient. There was a time when Rara played the piano until late, making June worried because he couldn't join his due to work. At one point, Rara became suspicious of an old man with a cart who suddenly approached her. It turns out that the old man wanted Rara to play a song that reminded him of his late wife. Rara was moved because old man was the first to cry when he saw her performance.
고마워요, 할아버지. 정말 고맙습니다.
That night, June, who had just gotten home from work, was approached by a mysterious person. It turns out the person who met June that night was Eun-seok. Initially, she was suspicious and accusing Eun-seok of stalking him for several days. It turns out Eun-seok lived with Mrs. Jean, where Rara resides. Realizing Eun-seok's behavior made June uncomfortable because it seemed like he was overly involved with Rara. Rara's first day of work finally arrived, but she was disappointed because the woman who promised her a job changed her mind. The woman admitted that there were no job openings this time. Not hopeless, Rara will try to find a job. Though she has to bear the embarrassment as in front of June and Mrs. Jean, she said she already had a job. Seeing the sadness on Rara's face when she returned, June finally found out that Rara's job had been canceled. The room June had prepared for Rara helped ease her sadness a little at that moment. June allows Rara to stay over for the night if she is missing Mimi.
가끔 미미랑 있고 싶을 때 와서 놀다가.
At that time, they were shocked by a package in the form of a piano sent by someone the owner of the Tangal Star account. The account owner asked Rara to meet them in 2 weeks. Even though she doesn't know who owns the account, Rara is very grateful because she no longer needs to visit the park to play piano. The next day, someone's suspicious behavior while exercising in the park suggests that he was the one who sent the piano. Finally, Rara had the idea to open a piano lesson vacancy at June's house. After finding the perfect name for her music school, Rara held a grand opening event, which was of course sponsored by June. She invited Eun-seok to come to the event. Eun-seok's charm once captivated Mrs. Jean other ladies. Eun-seok once thanked June because he was very sympathetic to Rara's situation. That statement only made June wondering why Eun-seok was worried about Rara, who is just as patient. Eun-seok said that he actually came to Rara's failed wedding event. At that time, June found out that Eun-seok was a doctor who also lived in the same building as him. After tidying up the simple room made by June, Rara asked where June's family is currently. June admitted that he didn't have any family.
난 가족이 없어.
Rara started handing out brochures to various schools. But after a week, not a single student had enrolled. That day, Rara accepted Eun-seok's invitation to eat. Once he asked Rara why she was so reliant on June, whom she had just met. Eun-seok then offered a loan if Rara needed capital and other necessities to pay off her debt to June. She said she felt more comfortable relying on June for now.
피아노 학원도 차리게 해줬고 제가 신세를 좀 많이 져서요.
One day, a corpse washed up on the shore. After examined, the body was identified as Sunwood June. A detective then called Mrs. Jo and informed her that her son had drowned. So far, it is still unknown why June's identity card was found on the body and what the motive behind all this is. There is no need to doubt Rara's ability to win someone's heart. That made Mrs. Jean like her more and consider her like her sister. Unable to bear the fact that a week had passed without getting any students, June finally decided to sign up for piano lessons and paid all the fees in advance. Hearing that made Rara happy because June was her first student. However, a few moments later, Eun-seok arrived later for the same reason.
피아노를 좀 배우고 싶은데.
After giving a basic lesson and asking Eun-seok to try, Rara believes Eun-seok is already skilled at playing the piano by the sitting posture and finger placement playing. Finally, Eun-seok showcased his talent by playing a song that Rara really likes, titled Someone Who Is Falling in Love. Realizing that Eun-seok was starting to approach to Rera made June a little upset because Eun-seok wanted to take Rera home. However, when about to leave, for some reason Rera's words reminded June of a tragic event where he once lost someone he loved. In the end, that night June stopped Rera from going home because he wanted to be with her. June's strange behavior shocked Rera, but since Eun-seok was waiting for her, she went home troubled throughout the journey. Until an intersection, Rera asked Eun-seok to pull over the car. In the end, Rera stayed over at June's house and they talked about many things related to life. Unlike June, who admits he currently has no dreams, Rera longs for some dishes she once enjoyed after becoming unemployed. Rera also dreams that one day her tutoring center will have many students.
별건가? 하고 싶은 게 있으면 그게 꿈이지.
Next day, June prepared breakfast menu Rera wanted. While waiting for free time, Rera often plays songs making Mrs. Jean and her friends happy as the salon feels more elegant with music. The aroma of the food Mrs. Jean made increased Rera's appetite, and she broke through the secret door separating the two rooms. Meanwhile, June has to work part-time in a garden owned by an old man, that is Mr. Manbuck. That day, Mr. Manbuck came to Rera's class and registered as a student. Apparently, he wants to sing a song that Rera played in the park. Rera thought Mr. Manbuck was a scavenger as she saw him with a cart, but she learned Mr. Manbuck was the owner of the building rented by June and Mrs. Jin's salon.
몰랐어? 네?
Meanwhile, in the police station, Mrs. Jo meets detective who informs her. If the DNA test results on the corpse show that the man is not her son, Mrs. Jo urges the detective to quickly find June because his identity was washed up on the same beach. She also seemed very angry with Kim In-soo, the man she had previously paid a lot to find June, but so far there have been no results.
출시장 당신! 지금 어디야?
Eun-seok's arrival at work made June very uncomfortable. He asked what Eun-seok's intention was for watching him. Eun-seok admitted he just having lunch and had no other purpose. A beautiful woman named Youngju, who is also his ex-wife, came to meet Eun-seok that day. However, they still remained awkward with each other, and Eun-seok admitted taking piano lessons. Out of curiosity, Youngju followed where Eun-seok went and asked Mrs. Jean if the piano tutor, who Eun-seok visited, was a young and beautiful woman. However, because she fell asleep in the salon, Youngju failed to meet Rera as Eun-seok invited Rera out piano lesson ends. Rera then took Eun-seok to the food stall where June works, though Eun-seok was reluctant as he had already eaten there earlier. Coincidentally, Haeyoung and Seong-gi were also there, so an employee felt that June had many fans.
팬클럽 한 명 축하하네. 수트 입은 남자.
Without a doubt, Eun-seok shared his status of having been divorced. Hearing that also surprised Rera because she didn't expect Eun-seok to share his personal story in front of people they had just recently met. When she came home from dinner at Mrs. Jean, she received a flower package without the name of the sender. At first, they thought the flowers were for Rera from one of the fans of the Twinkle Star account owner. From outside, a man could be seen watching the apartment where Rera currently lives. Before going to bed, Rera called June and informed him her car had been repaired. She asked June to take her to the workshop to pick it up. The next day, as he was heading to the workshop, June saw Rera from a distance talking to a man he didn't recognize. It was the man who was looking for him. At that time, the man didn't see June because he left in a hurry. Rera was happy to finally be able to drive her beloved car again, which turned out to be a birthday gift from his late father. Seeing Rera sleeping in the car made Haeyoung feel sorry, so she kept Rera company on the last night with her beloved car.
온 거 아니고 그냥 나도 한번 차에서 자보고 싶어가지고.
When Rera was about to sell the car, June suddenly showed up and canceled the sale. He didn't want Rera to throw away car memories and gave her some leeway to pay off the debt in installments. Instead, he offered Rera a job as his personal driver. The two of them then visited a high place where they could see the beauty of the city lights at night. An event from the past apparently made June unable to hold back tears, which also made Rera feel sad.
네가 오니까 나도 슬퍼.
The next day, Eun-seok noticed Rera's car parked at the apartment she decided not to sell. Eun-seok went to Seoul because he wanted to see a doctor there. Accidentally, Young accidentally saw his senior and then greeted him. It seems that Young actually intends to find a new girlfriend, though he can't contact Rera yet. A photo on the information board caught Yoon-seok's attention because June was in it during a hospital community service event. How shocked Yoon-seok was after finding out that June is the son of the hospital owner who ran away while in high school. He then remembered the moment he met June during a seminar at Suwonhwa Hospital a year ago.
죄송합니다.
Almost every June comes home from work, Rera always plays a song for him when she arrives. Even though June pretended to be indifferent and immediately took a drink without greeting Rera first. For some reason, Rera felt something was a bit off because June seemed taller than before. One day at Mrs. Jin's salon, she received a handsome male customer named An Jung-go. Due to an unexpected incident, Mrs. Jin made a mistake and cut the man's hair too short. Fortunately, Jung-go didn't seem upset, though Mrs. Jin already felt very guilty. That night, Jung-go, grudgeful towards Mrs. Jin, glued the salon door handle to vent his frustration. Out of curiosity about June, Eun-seok went to the food stall and left a medicine box on the food tray. Seeing the object, June remembered that he had seen Eun-seok at the hospital when he gave that object. In the end, June was worried Eun-seok might discover who he really was.
다음에 하죠.
The next day, June met with Eun-seok to determine how much Eun-seok knew. Eun-seok could actually inform June's family about his current whereabouts, but he doesn't do it because he wants to know the motive behind June's actions. He also asked June to be honest with Rera, especially about his status as a student.
글쎄, 내가 뭐 그렇게까지야.
After June's father returned to Korea, he kept asking about June, but his mother said that June was still busy with tutoring out of town. Mrs. Jo is aware her husband will be angry if he finds out June has run away from home recently. While Mrs. Jin was unlucky as her hand stuck to iron glue, Jung-go was seen enrolling in piano class. A few moments Mr. Manbuk arrived because it is his first day of training. Even though it's difficult and he's learning piano, Mr. Manbuk is enthusiastic, as is Rera, teaching him patiently and cheerfully. As the evening approached, June still wasn't home, making Rera worried. She went to the store where June worked before the food stalls. It turned out that June was mourning the loss of his best friend, Jae-hin, who had died in a tragic accident. Since then, June has faced difficulties as his friends think he caused Jae-hin's accident to be the best student in the class. But what made June feel the most guilty was that Jae-hin had an accident when he wanted to attend June's important event. Since then, June lost focus on his studies and even ignored his school exams, which made his father furious, believing June had a weak mentality.
그깟 친구 하나 죽은 게 무슨 대수라고.
That day, June's mother was shocked as her child left Trot window. To this day, she has become increasingly frustrated because both the hired help and the police have failed to find June. Realizing Eun-seok might reveal his escape plan, at that time, June said goodbye to Rera, in case one day he might leave without telling her. Hearing that made Rera feel sad, especially since June said he wanted to be alone.
넌 어떨 것 같아?
In front of her business place, Rera saw a child wanting lessons and didn't have the money. Rera happily invited the child to play the piano. From the explanation of the boy named Jamin, Rera learned that June was actually very excited when he came home and was greeted by the music played by Rera. But June deliberately acted indifferent in front of Rera. At that time, Rera begged June to stay by her side because her debts were unpaid. Finally, June decided to stay in the city because he wanted to make an agreement with Eun-seok. Actually, June knows that Eun-seok is also pretending in front of Rera because Eun-seok is a close friend of Rera's fiancé. Because they both kept secrets, they agreed to live their lives as usual and forget about the other's business.
그러니 밝히는 것도 각자합시다.
Seeing Eun-seok getting closer to Rera made June feel annoyed, so he decided to go wherever Eun-seok took Rera, even if it was just to eat ice cream by the roadside. They were talking about the Twinkle Star account that would meet Rera at a cafe tomorrow. They were very enthusiastic, so they planned to join Rera and record it. The day of Rera's meeting with the Twinkle Star account arrived. Cautifully dressed and made up, Rera went to the cafe. At first, they thought the owner of the account was Jungo. Juno admitted Rera mistook him as someone else as he met a friend at the cafe.
기다리는 사람이 있었나 본데 저는 아닌 것 같습니다.
June was not seen with Rera because he's meet Mr. Manbuk for something very important. That morning, Mr. Manbuk was met by Kiminsu to learn June's whereabouts. At the time, Manbuk said he didn't know where June was because June must have had his own reasons for running away from home. June said if he would return home when the time was right.
때가 되면 제가 알아서 갈게요.
By late afternoon, the man behind the Twinkle Star account still hadn't shown up, which led Rera and the others to finally head home. They sent a message that they had to cancel the appointment due to something important. Something strange was then revealed in a room where Jungo had many photos of Rera pinned to the wall. Apparently, those photos were taken from Rera's social media. However, if Juno owns the Twinkle Star account is still a question mark. Curious about the Twinkle Star man, finally Rera thought the Twinkle Star guy was Unsok by his messages and behavior over the past few days. However, when she told June about it, he didn't respond to any of it. He told Rera not to jump to conclusions so easily.
사실 도도솔솔랄라솔 그 사람 나야.
The next day, Rera wanted to thank Unsok for his kindness. However, since Unsok couldn't leave his duties, finally Rera making gimbap with the help of Mrs. Jean and other mothers. After delivering the food to Unsok, Rera stopped by the tutoring center where she found an idea and hope that her tutoring center would also have many students. Rera had to prepare one of her students to participate in a music competition so that her name would become more well-known. One of the students he can rely on right now is Jamin, who seems to have extraordinary talent. However, until now, she does not know where Jamin lives.
그나저나 요즘 재민이가 안 보이네.
While Rera was teaching Jungo, June was actually a bit worried because the man had seemed suspicious from the start. He asked Mrs. Jean to keep an eye on Rera while she was with that man. On the other hand, Mrs. Joe met with Mr. Manbuk and gave him money so that he would be willing to help her by providing information about June. As she was about to return to Seoul, Mrs. Joe briefly saw June with a girl. However, when approached, June had already disappeared. It turns out, Mrs. Joe attended Rera's wedding because she knew Rera's future in-laws at the time.
어디서 본 것 같은데.
In the night, Mr. Manbuk met with June and urged him home because his mother was worried about him. He also handed over the money entrusted to him by Mrs. Joe, but June refused it at the time. At the same time, Unsuk invited Rera to the apartment park because he was going to return the lunchbox.
맛있게 잘 먹었습니다.
During working holidays, June asked Rera to find Jamin's address. They saw the mess at Jamin's residence. Rera eventually found out that Jamin didn't have a mother and was often left alone while his father worked. Rera asked Jamin and offered free lessons as long as Jamin practiced diligently. Even though he could play the piano, it turned out that Jamin couldn't read sheet music because he had learned everything on his own.
악보를 못 보는.
That night, Rera invited Jamin to have dinner with Mrs. Jean at her house. Seeing the attention Rera gives to June and vice versa makes Haeyoung jealous. She ended up heartbroken when June rejected her confession of love. In the end, Haeyoung intends to match Rera with Unsok. With Seongi, Haeyoung sets a watch party with Unsok and Rera. Then deliberately she canceled it, so in the end, Rera only watched with Unsok. June, who had just come home from work, excitedly prepared food for Rera. However, Rera didn't return home. June finally found out that Rera was with Unsok at the cinema. Without thinking, he grabbed Rera because he didn't want Rera's attention to be diverted to Unsok. At the cinema, Unsok bravely confessed love to Rera. Rera gently turned him down at that moment. She then thanked Unsok for all the help and attention he had given. Seeing Rera and Unsok from a distance, June reasoned that he came to pick up Rera because he couldn't bear to let her go home the night. Now June is in a dilemma about whether he should express his feelings first or reveal the secret. That he was actually the youngest member of the hospital's power group.
와, 안 간단한데?
Because has need to train Jamin for the competition. Rera planned to reduce the practice schedule of other students, including Jungo. Jungo seemed unhappy and asked Rera not to reduce her training schedule. Even though all this time, Junggo never actually practiced, but he only asked Rera to play songs according to his requests. By accident, June overheard a conversation between Mrs. Jo and Rera's mother-in-law, where they talked about Rera's current life running a course on the outskirts of the city. Curious, June went back to the place where Rera lived to see what the girl Eun-seok liked looked like, even if it was just through a photo. Now, June is starting to show his feelings for Rera. While riding the cable car, he said that Rera is his source of happiness right now, in the midst of the despair he's going through. Kim-in-soo then starts looking for June at a hospital, the same place where June had taken Mr. Manbok when he was critically ill. A nurse said that June had once been seen with a female pianist patient at that hospital. Min-suk finally remembered that the tutor who gave him the brochure had a connection to June. With that brochure in hand, Min-suk hurried off to find the place where those people were gathered. When June's house was empty, Kim-in-soo came by and became convinced that the June he was looking for was in that place. Kim-in-soo actually wanted to take June home right then and there, but when he tried to get approval from Mrs. Jo, the call went unanswered.
왜 이래?
Unfortunately, Kim-in-soo ended up in a conflict with Junggo, mistakenly thinking that Junggo was a new person hired by Mrs. Jo to replace him. Due to his carelessness, Kim-in-soo even suffered a head injury from an attack by Junggo. To avoid leaving any traces, Junggo took the man's wallet and phone. Kim-in-soo himself was eventually helped by Mrs. Jean, who immediately took him to the hospital. After an investigation was conducted, the detectives were unable to locate Kim-in-soo's family, as he had remained unconscious for the past 2 days. Junggo's arrival at the tutoring center with flowers made her feel a bit uncomfortable, especially when he started getting aggressive and tried to touch her. Rera asked Junggo to stop taking lessons if he had other intentions. Afterward, Junggo bought a gift for Rera at the store where June works. Seeing Junggo's rude behavior, he immediately went home and warned Rera to be more careful around that guy. Rera said that Junggo was no longer taking lessons with her. After being rejected by Junggo, who was annoyed with Rera, however, he still couldn't bring himself to hate her because she had always treated him kindly. In the end, she realized that June's affection and love were actually much greater, but she had never noticed it. The next day, Rera didn't even flinch when hand-styled and did her hair in an extremely tacky way. That day, Rera planned to invite the neighborhood moms to watch Jamin's practice performance, because the next day, Jamin would be competing in an inter-city competition. They were enthusiastic and supported Jamin, including preparing a suit and attending the event. Losing contact with Kim-in-soo makes Mrs. Jo worried, especially now that she can't reach him because Kim-in-soo's phone is in Junggo's hands. Feeling his wife was hiding something, June's father began questioning one of his confidants. He asked about June's whereabouts and his wife's daily activities.
요새 특별히 만나는 사람 있나?
A bad incident happened to Jamin just as he was about to leave for the event. Suddenly, Junggo approached him and forced him to come along. Worse yet, he pulled Jamin's hand until the bones shifted. I don't know why Junggo wanted to kidnap Jamin, but he immediately left when he realized Rera's presence. At that time, Jamin had not said the condition of his hand couldn't be moved. In front of the judges and the audience, he was disqualified for playing the piano with only one hand. Suddenly, Rera remembered the event when she was a child. Only her father consoled her when she experienced failure. She then offered her support to Jamin, even though he had failed to showcase his talent that day. They then continued meeting at a restaurant because Eun-seok wanted to treat them. A warm atmosphere was evident because they are not family. They complement each other and make Rera a stronger person than before. While taking Jamin home, Eun-seok finally found out that there was a young man who had asked Jamin to go, who was also Rera's piano lesson student. Unexpectedly, while Rera was still at the restaurant, she received a phone call from someone asking her to move her car. But after that, Rera disappeared and could not be contacted again. This made Eun-seok panic and immediately returned to the restaurant. Together with June, he split up and looked around and found Rera's cell phone lying in the parking lot.
차는 차가 없는데?
It turns out June was monitoring Jungko's suspicious behavior, which led him to a secluded boarding house. How shocked June was when he broke down the door to that room that was filled with photos of Rera from several years ago. Jungko kept a voice message card from Rera. Some of the items there reminded June of a job training place he attended some time ago. June immediately headed to the place he believed, and that's where Rera was being held. In a bound state, Rera is helpless and asks what Jungko's intention is with the kidnapping. It seems like Jungko is a psychopath obsessed with beautiful women like Rera. Hearing June's voice coming to find her made Rera try to drop her body to the floor because she couldn't scream due to her mouth being gagged. In short, June found out which room Rera was being held in and beat Jungko up well. Jungko suffered a head injury from being hit by a blunt object while Rera fainted. Seeing Jungko's vital signs and bleeding, June thought the man was already dead. On the other hand, Man-buk, who is now at June's residence, finally finds out that June is in big trouble after successfully saving Rera.
준아,
June was then taken to the police station for interrogation, while Rera and the perpetrator were taken to the hospital. A detective identified June as the son of Mrs. Jo, a wealthy woman from Seoul who has come to inquire about the search for June. Mr. Man-buk wanted to tell Mrs. Jo about the situation, but June always stopped him.
안 돼요.
The next day, Mrs. Jo came to the police station because the detective contacted her. After resolving June's case, Mrs. Jo took him home because June wasn't detained because he was still a minor. From the detective's statement, Haeyoung and Seongi were shocked to learn June was their age. Both of them couldn't do much when June was forced to leave the small town by his parents. However, June kept looking for a chance to flee. He uneasy because he didn't know Rera's condition.
화장실 가고 싶어요.
참아.
급해서 그래요.
At the hospital, Rera regained consciousness. However, she encountered Kiminsu, who ended up revealing June's true identity. By taking a taxi, Rera went to the police station. But unfortunately, she arrived too late. When June tried to contact Rera with Seongi's help, it turns out Mrs. Jo was already watching Rera and using her as bait to make June appear quickly. That night, June's father came to Unpo City, which making Mrs. Jo panic more. Being confined for a month at home make frustrated June. He refused to eat and study as his mom took his phone so he could no longer communicate with Rera. Meanwhile, Rera herself feels that something is missing in her life. She tries to divert that thought by eating a lot and doing things she never liked before. Every day, Rera continues activities to teach Mr. Man-buk piano. Occasionally, Unsuk comes to check Rera and help her with many things. It turns out, the mystery about June's identity card found in the body bag has been revealed. It turns out, the man pickpocketed June's wallet at a market. Kiminsu became closer to Mrs. Jean because the woman who saved him a few days ago when he had a head injury. Because Mr. Man-buk's piano skills, Rera intends to hold an event by inviting local neighbors. She wants Mr. Man-buk to be happy and feel pride for playing his late wife's favorite song. On that day when the adults were busy, Haeyoung and Seongi planned to visit Seoul June. After a few hours of travel, the two reached June's grand house. However, Mrs. Jo had her maid kick them out because worry they might affect June's mind. From his room, June apparently had already seen his friend's arrival, so he deliberately staged the event of him fainting. The ambulance quickly arrived as Mrs. Jo thought June was malnourished from not eating. It turns out on the night, June fooled the medical staff and he mugged to switch with Seongi. June asks Seongi to replace him as the patient. Meanwhile, he meets Rera in Unpo as there are many confessions Rera must hear from him. Mr. Man-buk's performance went smoothly. Everyone was deeply moved by the middle-aged man's performance because he performed with genuine emotion. After the neighbors left, Rera was lonely and thought about June unexpected, then June appeared in front of her. June's appearance eased Rara's loneliness, and the two rode bicycles to favorite spot in Unpo area. June explains his reason for running away from home after feeling uncomfortable with family demands, as he still regrets his friend's death. But now, after going through so many life experiences with Rara, June had managed to change his perspective on each person's destiny. For him, the age difference with Rara wasn't a barrier for their love to be together. Mrs. Joe finally finds out about June's disappearance. When the doctor examined the patient, Mrs. Joe realized that it was not her soon. A few moments later, June called his mother and promised he would come home that very night. He asked his two friends to be taken back to Unpo by a private driver. After meeting Rara last night, June is now more diligent in studying and is kind to his mom. He then asked for his phone to be returned so he could communicate with Rara and her friends.
핸드폰은 좀 주시면 안 될까요?
From a tutor, Mrs. Joe received news that June is more determined to enter the mathematics faculty. A few days after arriving in Seoul, June received bad news that Rara had fallen off her bicycle, prompting him to rush to the hospital where she was being treated. Luckily, Rara only suffered minor injuries to her wrist, even though that day June was being waited on by his parents and a tutor for a consultation.
이따 저녁 약속 있는 거 있지 않았지?
This also made Mrs. Joe feel annoyed and wanted to meet Rara. She doesn't want June's education to fail thinking about romance. Mrs. Jean and her friends felt Rara would be threatened by Mrs. Joe. So they decided to keep an eye on the meeting. Rara humbly understood Mrs. Joe's request. She understands because no parent fears for their child's future. Rara promised to return June to where he belongs. Rara then returned June's money so that there would be no ties left between them.
이제 줘야 할 것 같아요.
One day, Rara met June in Seoul and left a letter before she left. The letter requested June to focus on his education and asked him to forget Rara. The letter stated that Rara would live a good life with the people near her.
넌 똑똑하니까 나보다 더 잘 알고 있으리라 생각해.
Several months passed. June finally received information that Rara and Eun-sok were getting married. June rushes to the church and takes Rara away from her wedding to Eun-sok. However, it turned out that this was a form of promotion because Haeyoung and Seongi, who had graduated from high school, wanted to open a wedding organizer business. This ultimately made June embarrassed because his image in the education company is now online.
너 보고 웨딩 크래셔래?
뭐?
The mystery of the Twinkle Star account apparently is unsolved. Because when Rara asked Eun-sok, he said he wasn't the owner of that account. Especially after checked, the sender of the piano for Rara was Mr. Manbuk. The next day, when asking Mr. Manbuk about it, the man had a heart attack, then Rara took him to the hospital. A few moments later, Mr. Manbuk's child arrived, so Rara decided to go back home. Rara shared the sad news with June over the phone. However, he bans June from Unpo as there is a family waiting for Mr. Manbuk. She asked June to focus on the upcoming university entrance exam that would be held in a few days. Due to hospital financing issues, Mr. Manbuk's child plans to sell the building Rara and Mrs. Jean live. The decision left them feeling sad as it holds many memories. They suggested that Rara meet with Mr. Mun, whom they believed to be the villain who had taken over Rara's late father's company. However, it turned out that Mr. Mun was now working as an amateur actor and didn't seem suspicious at all. Even the incident on the cruise ship turned out to be nothing more than a play. He actually gave a little money to Rara and promised to help and care for Rara forever. One day, June ran into a high school friend who had once had feelings for him. The girl is known as Young Gaeon. She invited June for coffee, saying she had been accepted to study abroad. She hopes that June will attend school there as he promised his late friend.
난 너가 지훈이랑 한 약속 지키러 간 줄 알았는데.
When June met Rara at a cafe, Gaeong insisted on going with him to the location. However, when he arrived at the agreed cafe, June fell asleep, so Gaeong took him home. This also made Rara think something bad happened June. Finally, she went to June's house to check on his condition. To her surprise, Rara saw a young woman coming out of June's house. She was sure the girl had a relationship with June after hearing her talk with Mrs. Joe.
전 그냥 준이랑 같이 있어서 너무 좋았어요.
Rara had a brief conversation with Gaeong, who asked her to end her relationship with June. With disappointment, Rara returned to Unpo wondering, does June already have a new girlfriend? In contrast to the feelings of Haeyoung and Seongi, who are happy now officially a couple. The next day, Rara shared what was making her worry. Haeyoung and Seongi then asked Kiminsu for help to spy on June and the girl. That same night, June asked Rara to meet, but now his attitude very cold. He asked Rara to stay out of his life. June wanted their romantic relationship to end here. He also said he would continue his studies abroad. In the midst of the emptiness of life, because of June's changing attitude, Rara gets a call from her piano teacher. The woman said that she would be returning to Korea soon. 1 week later, Rara picked up her teacher while June was taking his friend back to America. Because she was curious what medicine Eun-sok always took, his ex-wife Yeonju wanted the medicine. She then had the medicine checked at a lab. Finally, Yeonju was relieved because the medicine was just a regular vitamin.
진짜 다행이다.
At the hospital, Yeongju and Yeongnam were shocked to discover that June was actually the son of the hospital owner. After discussing with her piano teacher, Rara decided to pursue her grad studies abroad. The woman didn't want Rara to drown in her sadness. She hoped that Rara would have a brighter future. Eun-sok, who learned about Rara's decision, can't help much, even though he was deeply saddened by having to part with her. Before Rara really leaves, Eun-sok informs Rara that the owner of the Twinkle Star account was June. Meanwhile, June was seen packing up his belongings. Mrs. Jo was very sad to see her son leave. He wasn't going to college, but for treatment. Without June's parents realizing it, his frequent nosebleeds and sudden physical weakness were actually related to leukemia. That's why June wanted to part ways with Rara, because he had to undergo chemotherapy abroad. June doesn't want Rara to be sad because June's life is short. June, who is about to seek treatment, asked his mother's permission to say goodbye to Rara one last time. He also took the time to stop by Unpo to meet his friends and hold a small party. June's words at that time actually made Eun-sok think, because June asked him to take good care of Rara. Days turned into months. June occasionally called Rara where he was treated. His situation may be sad because his body is getting thinner due to the disease that is eating away at him. But Rara knows June is busy with college classes and a tight schedule.
근데 많이 바쁘다고 자기가 전화할 때만 받으라고 했단 말이야.
There was a time when Mrs. Jean planned to hold a Christmas celebration that would take place in 3 months. Rara then asked June to come to the event. That day, Rara received good news as Mr. Manbuk had recovered and could return home. She handed him a letter from June and asked Mr. Manbuk to read it. For months, June had been practicing the song Rara wanted, all while undergoing treatment. The Christmas celebration came, where Rara and the others prepared a music performance. But after waiting for several hours, June still hadn't shown up. A message informed Rara that June's flight had been delayed due to snowfall. June sent his best practice video, which Seongi played alongside Rara's piano performance. The performance deeply moved everyone in attendance and made them miss June, who was said to be arriving the next day. Tears suddenly flowed heavily from Mr. Manbuk. It turns out the letter June sent was a farewell and asking Manbuk to stay healthy. June hoped they could meet again someday, as he was currently battling a serious illness.
인사도 못 드리고 급하게 떠나기도 했어요.
Eun-sok's performances was also very impressive. That made his ex hope her relationship with Eun-sok could be repaired. The next day, instead of June arriving, Mrs. Jo came to see him in person. She explained that June would never be able to come again. The video and message sent the night before had actually been sent by Madame Jo. It turned out that the video had been recorded by June a month ago. June had deliberately hidden his true condition because he didn't want to appear sick in front of Rara. Hearing Mrs. Jo's words implying that June had passed away made Rara cry. Mrs. Jo thanked her, saying that Rara's presence had given June strength and encouragement throughout his treatment. The sad news suddenly made Mrs. June and Eun-sok are shocked. They never expected June would leave so soon. Long story short, 5 years passed and Rera remained in Unpo and canceling her plans to study abroad. He is focused on developing his business in opening piano lessons. Haeyoung and Seyoung lived happily ever after deciding to get married and have an adorable son. The relationship between Eun-seok and Youngju is improving, and they intend to reconcile. They learned their strengths and weaknesses. The various events they experienced made them realize that they couldn't be separated.
자기야.
For years at Unpo, Rera certainly remained single because she couldn't forget June. Until one day, she played a song that reminded her of the moment when June came home from work. Rera was shocked because June was still alive and met her at that night. It turns out that for the past 5 years, June has been battling his illness and hid from Rera about his true condition. Now both of them live happily and long for a more serious love story. Rera's piano playing has brought change to many people's lives by providing endless encouragement.